We're helping families make the most expensive decision of their life.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Housing Insiders, the podcast for founders, builders, lenders, and regulators, and anyone who believes that everyone should be well housed. I'm Jonathan Lawless.
And I'm Jeremy Potter. On Housing Insiders, we're bringing you the smart conversations with people in the know that give you actionable ideas that you won't hear anywhere else.
We have an amazing guest today, a celebrity in my mind. Our guest is Leo Pareja, the CEO of eXp Realty. If you don't know eXp Realty, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. They've got more than, I think, 87,000 agents worldwide, about $143 billion in sales, at least the last I checked in 2023. Cloud-based brokerage, super interesting industry right now. And I have to say that Leo is, without a doubt, one of the most important leaders and influencers, honestly, in the real estate brokerage world.
Welcome to Housing Insiders, Leo. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, and that's a hell of an intro. I appreciate that, Jonathan.
Yeah, of course, man. Great to see you. I want to start with the topic du jour, which is like on, I think, everybody's mind, at least insofar as I relate to your industry. It's been on the top of my mind. But, given all the change that's happening, the biggest topic in my mind is pocket listings and sort of this exclusive listing thing that's happening. And maybe not everyone's super steeped in this issue. So I was hoping maybe you could kind of give us a quick history of where this issue kind of came from before we kind of get into your thoughts on the market today.
Yeah, so it flared up, in my opinion, 2 years ago, and I got loud about it back then with CCP and enforcing rules. And so what I think, and again, I'm a policy real estate nerd, so I think I'm in good company here, but it's really appreciating how North American real estate works. We as Americans and Canadians completely take a transparent, complete, liquid, total market for granted because we enjoy these things called MLSs, right? I operate in 29 countries. We sell a lot of real estate outside of North America, and we just kind of take this thing for granted. It's a slowly, evolutionary based thing that happened. It wasn't dreamt up in a lab. It happened super organically, and we're here. And right now, there are some folks who are trying to rip it apart, in my opinion, for economic gain, and have wrapped it up in really cute marketing speak, calling it seller choice. I sold real estate for 15 years. That's how you and I met, Jonathan, when I represented Fannie Mae. I've never had a seller in my entire life say, "Hey, I want to sell my house, but I want you to keep it a secret." That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That is not a thing.
Right.
I've had maybe a federal judge, or in my roles, I've heard of a DEA agent on the border in El Paso who's like, "I can't have my stuff out there because my family might get targeted." Okay, those are two examples. Two. Right. And then everybody goes to the celebrity. It's like, okay, the median home price in this country has nothing to do with that. Right. I think it's just an attempt to double end deals, period. And the question I would ask any practitioner is, would you do that with your own house? If you were fixing and flipping a house or getting ready to sell your one property as a realtor, what would you do? Unequivocally, they would say, I put it on the market. Right. And I brought up history there, Jonathan. When I was a Fannie Mae agent, you guys had a first look period. It had to be on the almost for 14 days minimum before you would accept an offer, right? You guys, as the largest seller of properties during the financial crisis, understood that the more exposure, the better. And it was in my listing agreement that I had to syndicate to all these places, right? It was exposure was the name of the game. So a couple things have shifted structurally. 15 years ago, there was no national brokerages. So you opened up by saying how many agents I have. In the United States alone, I have 63,000 agents. That in 2025 did 343,000 transactions for, I think, almost 190 billion in sales. We didn't exist when a lot of these rules and systems were built. You didn't have companies that had hundreds of millions of dollars in cash in the bank with liquidity, access to capital markets where they can borrow billions of dollars to go buy their competitors. What we enjoy in this country is special, right? I think we forget what MLSs are. I think people reduce them to databases, but they're actually cooperatives, right? And it's a cooperative in the same sense of what farmers did to compete with big agro, and where it's hey, we're going to pool our resources for a benefit to everyone. And so the benefit is I give you my data on the same day you give me your data. It keeps the cost down for everybody, which ultimately gets passed along to the consumer. The consumer gets a complete unified experience. And if you want an example of what that doesn't feel like, jump over to France, jump over to Spain, jump over to any other first world country that doesn't enjoy this. And, consumers are going to 8 or 9 websites, having to call 8 or 9 different listing agents and setting 8 or 9 different appointments because buyer agency doesn't exist. Like I can go on this topic.
I mean, it's an incredible thing. I just wanted to double click on something that you said, which is the motivation for getting out of the system. And again, the system, we enjoyed, to your point, allows everybody to see every home that's listed because everyone cooperates and agrees that if you're going to list a home, you put it here. We all agree to do that. We all can see it. The reason I might, as a brokerage, is if I get enough size and scale and I get a listing, I want the home I'm selling to be bought by one of my agents too. Is that the motive of like, I'm not going to put this on the public listing because the only agents I want to see this property on the buy side are my own agents? Am I understanding the motivation correctly?
That is why I think they're doing it. That's not what they're publicly saying.
For sure. That makes sense. And what they're publicly positioning, and I really have a hard time wrapping my mind around this, is like, if you let me do this without making it public, I can somehow sell it for more. Is that the claim?
I think it's a brilliant exercise in marketing by calling it price discovery and all these fancy terms for it. But this is the one sentence that I always go back to for folks who can't get their head around it. The concept of let me try it off the market before I put it on the market is predicated on a market. Right? Let that sink in. Like, let's just say we all tried off the market. Then there is no on the market, right? It's a fragile ecosystem. And a lot of folks talk about like there's multiple there isn't. There isn't. It's black and white. When you and the breaking point of a marketplace is, I think, a couple points. I think it's minimal, right? Like if enough stuff is no longer on the market, then we don't assume there's a market.
Mm-hmm.
A two-sided marketplace is one of the hardest things to create, right? That's why you see things like there's only one Amazon. There's only one eBay, right? Like two-sided marketplaces, I think in capitalism are probably the hardest things to create. And to have a cooperative one that's not owned by a single entity is almost like magic of capitalism, right? The fact that fierce competitors just agree to work in this system. I was explaining to someone that recently, MLS executives, I said, I actually, there was a room full of MLS executives who asked me the same kind of questions. And I said, guys, we are all elephants with a rope around our foot tied to a stake in the ground. At any point, we can actually trample you and each other. The system is wonderful the way it is because it gives buyers and sellers a fair opportunity. Like I don't know of another way to prove true market economics other than exposing it to the most amount of people. And like, if we underpriced it, you'll get 60 offers. If you overpriced it, days on market, like a real litmus test of accuracy and purity in the data, you don't get offers and you lower the price, right? Like, it's like, we can't have both ways. Like, we just need to choose what we want to have. And I truly, truly believe this keeps the cost down to the consumer. Like, I would jump over to Australia, and REA Group has a real monopoly. And if, a seller wants more economics, they like exposure, they have to pay on top of their commissions, right? I think there's this jump to like, oh, the cost of sale is much lower in other countries. Not if you itemize it and add it all up. It's equal to or greater than, right? Like, I think in the G7, I think we're the 4th cheapest country to sell a home in. Like, when you add in all of the things, but I don't think a lot of people pause and drill down and in fairness, have a global perspective like the one we have.
Yeah, Leo, I think that's a very clear description and clear way of looking at it. I'm hoping you can put that in context for how critical an issue this is to your business, because you've made it sound just now as if it is core to the way in which you operate, the way in which the market. Is this the number one issue you have to think about as CEO, or is this a lot of noise and you would be like, yeah, we have to address it because the media is addressing it, we're asking you about it? Where does it rank for you in the
I'll
things you
address
think
it
about?
with how I look at it. Like, I genuinely think there's a positive for America. And maybe it almost sounds like I'm stumping to run for politics. I'm not. What is at risk is the financial system we enjoy. And I think Jonathan's past can speak to this. Like, We enjoy, what, 96.5% financing? Like, that's a real thing in this country. Like, what percentage of loans last year or this year are FHA? It's like 29%. The concept of a cash out refinance or high LTV or MI is predicated on perfect data. What's the LTV in Colombia? Right? It's 50-50. You put in $1, I put in $1. That's the only way I know that you're not going to run away with my money. Right? And it's a 5-year balloon and it's IO. Right? It behaves just like commercial paper. Right? And the same in Spain and in France. Like, this whole like, hey, let me get a mortgage online digitally through a workflow, and like we can close without a human being going on. That's what you guys are working towards. Like, that's what fintech is working towards. That is predicated on financial institutions being able to create securities that trust what we say the property is worth. Right? That is purely like, I asked an agent in Italy who's listing a Tuscan villa for us, for our brokerage, and I said, how do you price it? And she literally went, like,
finger in the air.
Finger
let's
in
just
the air
try.
for those listening. Yeah. Total guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, it's a wild ass guess, right? So it's, when you ask me, like, am I being like self-serving? Like, I think that's what's at risk. I also tell people, like, don't forget, I actually do this in 27 countries at scale. Like, I think I'm uniquely qualified and prepared if the world switches on me. But I will say, I think the cost will go up. I think the portals, they don't go away because we stop cooperating. They change their business model. They pivot, and they pivot to an advertising model. Last year, 2024, 2025, REA Group tried to buy Rightmove in the UK. Do you guys remember that headline? They went at him like 3 times. I think the last offer was like 8.6 billion on all cash. They turned it down. When I looked at the math of total transactions that took place in the UK over the same period in Zillow in the US, by total transactions to market cap on offer, my math said that Zillow was underpriced by 3 times if you had the revenue model that Rightway has. Rightmove has. I think the portals would love to have an advertising model. They'd make a lot more money because they already own the eyeballs, right? Like, when someone says, aren't you mad that these portals monetize our stuff? I'm like, I'm not mad they don't send me a bill. Rightmove sends me a massive bill every month. All of them, Realtor Homes, Zillow, Redfin. I think it is my fiduciary responsibility as the CEO of a brokerage to have our listings on behalf of our sellers on as many eyeballs as possible. And because in any other version of the world, like, I'm gray enough that I used to post listings in the Washington Post in 2002 to drive eyeballs to an open house. That is now a feature in all of the portals for free. And I was paying $165 in 2002 for like 15 words. Do the adjusted for inflation if you wanted to do an ad for an open house. So I'm okay with them monetizing the data as long as I am making sure that our sellers' listings are exposed to the most amount of eyeballs in the shortest amount of, like, my definition of capitalism, which I talk about all the time to my agents, is removing friction from a product or service. Period. That's the end of it. Like, any entrepreneur building anything is creating a frictionless process. That's who wins. This feels like a whole lot of friction added in for pure economics, which isn't sustainable. It'll get disrupted, right? So it is partly noise, but it is going to add friction to the world.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your view because I mean, first of all, it's a very compelling way to think about it. You think with all that's happening in your space, right? Consolidation, this sort of testing of pocket listings, the increase of technology being used by various platforms, and the NAR settlement, obviously worth mentioning, although that's a little bit in the rearview mirror, but that still is a topic that gets brought up, and I think on the buy side, that's still being discussed or settled. Where do you think all this ends up? Or like, maybe to ask Jeremy's question a little differently, when you look at all these things happening in the American market, do you see a risk of this market changing into an advertising model, or do you think it will shake out sort of where it's been, because where it's been is actually what's best for consumers?
I got myself out of the prediction business.
Yeah, okay.
I told a reporter like 2 years ago that no one would ever buy anywhere because just of the size, scale, and debt. And I was very, very publicly proven incorrect. And it was funny because I told her, I was like, 100% degree of certainty, no one can buy it. And the day she dropped the article, she called me. She's like, "Do you remember?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember." So I'm now actually very consciously saying 99% probability. But on this question, I actually have no probabilistic outcome. What I can tell you is I have a plan A, B, C, D, and E. And I think that's my fiduciary responsibility to the enterprise. It's like, if this happens, I'll do that. If that happened, and by the way, just know that like my plans are already built, like the infrastructure, the plumbing, it doesn't matter to me in the sense of like I care as a practitioner. I care as someone who advocated for buyers and sellers my entire career on the pure advocacy side. But as a leader of a large enterprise, I have a plan A, B, C, D, and E, and all of the plumbing's already built to facilitate commerce no matter what happens.
Well, I'd love to know on that mindset then, as you know, thinking about your day to day, then what are the metrics or indicators that are really meaningful to you? What are you keeping an eye on a daily basis or a weekly basis that you use to then evolve those plans A, B, C, and D?
Yeah, and I think that's the part that goes to the noise. I don't really spend too much like so I think in everything you have to it's the dichotomy of living in the clouds and the dirt. Like the dirt is the like, are we onboarding people? Are we closing transactions? Do we have all the tools facilitated the transactions? And then the clouds is like, okay, in a black swan event, like how do I get properties on like a black swan event, in my opinion, was Chicago turning off the listings, right? 6 months prior, as I was seeing the tea leaves, I had a high degree, 99% chance that at some point someone was going to try something like that. And so we put in a direct feed into Zillow directly. And so all of our like the day those listings went dark, ours were the only ones, and like the family of companies we own is AG&T now, right? So it was eXp Next Home listings were the only listings in the Chicagoland area in the first couple hours. Other people signed direct feed agreements like as in a reaction to. So I think that's the answer. But and by the way, but I also have direct feeds into every national portal, right? Like I operate from a okay, forget politics. Let's just say an MLS gets hacked by a nefarious actor who holds a ransom for Bitcoin, and we cannot access the input module. By the way, that's not a far-fetched idea I just pitched you. That actually happened 2.5 years ago to Rapatoni, and 12 of my markets went dark. And I was like, oh shit, I can never let that happen again, right? So when I give you the A, B, D options, it may not even be like a bully trying to monetize. Like I need to plan for black swan events of all types. And so, I track agent onboarding, agents offboarding, transactions, volume, GCI, all of the things. But then one of the best compliments I recently received at a agent event was one agent came up to me and she said, "I feel safe at this company with you." And I said, "Tell me more." She goes, "Right now, there's so many headlines that are like scary sounding, but all I have to do is wait like 30 more minutes, and then I get an email from the company, probably from you, specifically telling us how like, don't worry about it, it's all taken care of. Click this button, we have a solution. Like our listings aren't down, whatever it is, because the goal for us, again, I'm a platform to the agents. I want to remove friction from their like we eat our own dog food, right? If that's our thesis, how do we make your job effortless because we're minding the shop in the background, which allows you to be hyper present in someone's living room and in the car and making sure that you're negotiating terms that are creative to that family's moment in time.
Yeah, I remember telling my dad when I was learning to drive, like, "Hey, I got this. I totally know how to drive a car." And his response was, "It's not about how you're driving; it's about how everyone else around you is driving and being ready for that." And there's some wisdom to that in terms of managing a business, and especially a business like yours today, where it's. I mean, you can sit back and drive the car, but if that's all you're doing, there's so much happening right now, unfortunately, that you just got to be aware of that and aware of what's around you. I want to maybe take a step away from them. We'll probably come back to some of these sort of chaotic topics in your industry, but I just want to get a sense of what the market looks like. You know, there's a lot of talk about the average first-time home buyer is now X years old, and that number often is made up or exaggerated, but whatever it is, like first-time buyers are in and out. There's a supply shortage. Talk to me about what you're seeing. I'd love to not only hear your views of like what does the American home buying market look like and how it's changed, but also given that you also have this international perspective, we're not the only country that's seeing rising rates, so on and so forth, affordability changes. I'm just curious to know whether or not home buying in America looks like home buying everywhere else. It's a pretty tricky time for everyone.
Yeah. So I'll address America first, which is Q4 of every year. I kind of do a media tour where everybody wants me to make a prediction, which is fun because, I get to be right and wrong publicly often. Q4 of 25, I was adamant because they were like, Fannie says 14%. I was like, no, they're smoking something. I'm sorry, NAR said 14%.
NAR,
And
yeah,
Fannie and
for
Freddie
you.
were between 4 and 6. And I was still like, they're also doing something. And they said, what do you think? I said, flat, like if we're lucky.
Hmm.
And they were like, why are you such a pessimist? I said, well, it's the macro that to me is obvious, right? I sat in the kitchen table and was in the car with people. Even if you are financially ready, if you see a headline like AI is going to destroy 60% of jobs, or you see like we're going to war in 3 fronts, and you're a renter and you're about to sign for the first time a 30-year commitment with a personal guarantee, you go, maybe I'll renew for 1 more year, right? Like, let's wait till it all calms down. It's like, hey, you have a government job. Like, AI is not taking your job. Oh, I didn't think about that, right? Like, it's the headline. If it bleeds, it leads. Has gone from like a couple hour news cycle to like a 3-second news cycle because like they're selling attention, and they is Meta and Google and everybody else. And fascinating thing I read recently, it's like the world is an order of magnitude safer than it was like in the 80s. Murder per capita, like violent crimes, like all these things. The difference now, and it was an article, I want to say it was in The Economist. The difference now, and this is how it was portrayed in the article, is that if a bus in Peru full of children gets into a horrible accident on the side of the mountain, you may have read it on a Sunday in the Washington Post, back to my 2002 example, maybe. Versus now you get to see the live stream on social of the kids screaming. And like our psyches weren't even designed to take this level of stimulus. Like our nervous system has to be fried at this point, right? So I think that's where I made the prediction. It's like, current, you know, chaos in our government economy is almost a feature, not a bug. And I don't see that calming down anytime soon. So that was my prediction that it's rates are not coming down. Right. My clickbait quote I said to a reporter recently was like, again, making predictions. They asked me to predict rates, and I almost made a weighted, range bet, which was, I bet you I'll see a 7 before I see a 5 in front of them.
Hmm.
And the reason I phrase it like that is because the 5 is like in the 5s, we get into that Goldilocks range of like unlocking seller lock that, on 3% rates. You might sell a house with a 3.5% rate if you can get a 5 rate. It's really hard at 7. It's almost like doubling, right? With payment shock. So even if you capture a bunch of equity, you'd have to be literally going from like the Northeast down to the Sun Belt, like in a halving event of pricing. So I don't see that getting any better.
Yep.
I think affordability is the biggest problem we have in this country. I don't have a magic wand to answer. If I was a legislator and they said, give me one idea, I would increase the owner occupant tax exemption. I'd double it. Like we haven't touched it since 1997. I think that because, I think people forget that, those memes on the internet about boomers having bought their house for, $46 and a pack of Skittles. Most of them, my parents included, are on fixed income, right? With appreciation, inflation affecting their cost of everything else. And so if their asset is all they have left and you're going to hit them with long-term capital gains, and some of these houses they've owned for 28 and a half years, so there's no more depreciation, so they're going to have some recapture. It's like the more we can help stimulate that, I think, is way more interesting than saying, you know, institutional investors aren't allowed to buy a house. That's 1% of the total inventory. It's so small in the grand scheme of things. It's far more interesting to talk about like who owns most of the houses, boomers, and how do we get them motivated to let go of some of that inventory.
I think that's a great suggestion. We've seen that as a NAR policy position of sort of lowering capital gains tax or expanding the amount that you can sell for and not pay tax. And I agree. Let's take a brief break and we'll come back and talk a little bit more with Leo.
All right, we're back on Housing Insiders. Leo, you mentioned earlier the agent in the living room, the agent driving around in their car. We just talked a little bit about the market. Can we now talk about that agent experience in the market and how your platform is addressing it? What is changing about the kitchen table conversation? Does the kitchen table conversation exist moving forward in the same way? And how are you giving agents like tools to manage the volatility you just mentioned, the market conditions you mentioned, and the technology headlines we see all day, every day? How should we be thinking about it? How do you think about it?
The numbers set you free, right? The truth to me is in the data. We have seen usage of realtors actually increase over the last 5 years. The frequency of selling a home is actually going up or extending. So the frequency is going down, the number of years in between. Like when I started selling real estate, it was like every 7 years. Now it's like 13 years. Partly because people are stuck in rate lock. People are aging way more gracefully. Like in 82, like my dad could probably outrun the three of us. And he's 82 and he looks fantastic. He probably looks like he's in the late 60s. That like he's extremely mobile. He's like they're not in a retirement home, right? They're hanging out with the grandkids, they're traveling, they're doing stuff. That's affecting it. So there's like non-real estate things happening all at the same time. But for every prediction of how AI was going to wipe out an entire industry, like the best one I've recently read that I really like is the radiologist. I don't know if you've seen the data on that. AI should, in theory, have wiped them all out because it can predict stuff better. We actually have had like a 30% like more demand for them because like the mundane and routine is being done, but like the expert is even more in demand now because the routine mundane stuff is being handled. When Expedia and Hotwire and all like almost decimated the travel agent, there's been like a crazy resurgence in travel agents lately, just because there's so much information now, and humans are craving an expert to discern the data and cut through the data. So I believe that there will always be demand for the expert that is delivering high level of value and who's like, I always say it's the Sherpa, right? So with all the technology in the world right now, and the Sherpa analogy is one I use a lot with agents, like either one of you could tell me you want to climb Mount Everest and you can ask your LLM to produce the perfect workout routine to get you at the right exercise and fitness and like it's really like oxygen capacity in your lungs and do all the workouts, and it can give you the perfect shopping list of the Gore-Tex and the GPS and all that. But when you two get to the base of the Himalayas, you better hire that local dude who's done it 400 times and can throw all that expensive shit you bought on their back and tell you, don't step there. You might fall off the damn cliff. Or like if a storm's coming, they can say, that's no big deal. Or like, yo, let's turn around or you're going to be a popsicle, right? Like, and only someone who's done it 400 times has the ability to give you that expert advice, right? Like you can't read that in an LLM. For every example I've heard of someone successfully selling their house between them and GPT, it's like there's like they were a seller. They had done this a couple times, right? It wasn't a first-time homebuyer navigating an FHA loan with a non-occupant home buyer and a down payment assistance program from the county, right? Like
that's it. That's the Mount Everest of our industry. Is like a first-time home buyer trying to buy a house today. But also, I think that's a great analogy because there's a well-worn path in technology that John and I talk about all the time, which is making experts more expert. Whatever the technology is, whether it's SaaS, whether it's AI, it doesn't matter. Making experts more expert is a well-worn path to success. And I really like hearing you confirm that and validate that because I think that's what we've all been working towards is like get the administrative stuff off the table and let people really be people and do what they need to do. So really appreciate that. And I'm going to use the Mount Everest example, particularly for first-time home buyers now, I think.
Yeah, Leo, we talked to tons of prop tech firms, startups that are looking to develop technology to help, in some cases replace, but in a lot of cases help agents. And they're often like, "Oh yeah, it's easy. I'll create this amazing technology, and then I'll get agents to use it." I've seen the story so many times, and I'm sure you have as well.
I tried it a couple times. Remember, I built it all for myself.
But in light of that, like Are there technologies that are working? Like, are there, give me a sense of what the landscape looks like right now, because I think more than ever, everyone's thinking AI is going to disrupt, and we're going to build an AI CRM that's going to do this and that for agents. But like, is anybody making progress that you look at and say, wow, this is really going to help my agents, or not?
I think it's always yes and no, right? So one of the things that I rant a lot about on the internet is just almost general entrepreneurship. I've kind of built and sold businesses in multiple verticals now, and every entrepreneur has the same fallacy where it's like, "Hey, I asked a bunch of people if they would pay me for this, and so I built it." Right? The only real litmus test on the planet is give me your credit card number.
Right.
Product market fit. It's like, yeah, a survey's great. Like, and so many of us get stuck in like a feedback loop, an echo chamber. Like, you build a product for real estate agents, and your focus group is the tech volunteer group at the MLS. Like, do you know how specific those people? They are the early adopters. Of
By
course,
definition. Yeah.
those 18 people thought it was cool, right? Again, I was a high performing team leader who built technology. And so I called like my friends. It was like Ben Kenny, Tim Heil, Tyler Smith, who all went on to build software companies. And it was like, they're like, yeah, this is crazy cool. You created weapons of mass destruction from a marketing standpoint. And then I turn it on and people are like, wow, this is a cool public record lookup system. I was like, you just described my Ferrari and you never got it. Like, I don't think you turned it on and put it in reverse and even took it out of the driveway. Like, it's like if my 6-year-old was sitting there going, "Rrrr," pretending he was like, like, you didn't even put it into first gear. Right. And so, but some of the craziest inventions in our world are actually accidental. Like, you know, I think Viagra was actually designed as heart medicine. They're like, well, in the blind study, there's this really random side effect, and they created one of the most economically viable medicines on the planet. But that's what it was designed for. So, a lot of times you just have to get a product to market and see if people will like GLP-1, right? It was like designed for diabetes. This other crazy side effect has created like what will probably become. I saw a post by Galloway the other day that said GLP-1s is more impactful to humanity than AI. And he went on this whole tangent on how it's helping people with just addiction and because food addiction is the same chemical trigger point as alcohol and all other things. To that effect, so many things in any industry, it's like, this is going to replace that. I'm like, show me, right? Like, I think people right now are using AI for the sake of AI versus asking, okay, what is the problem that we're solving? Friction point, product, service, experience. Okay, so let's look at the available tools to solve it: SOP, people, automation, or AI. And then let's actually pull the trigger on the best solution. Is how I think entrepreneurs should think of things versus like, I'm going to build this for the sake of building this.
Yeah. Let's dig a little deeper on that. So it's Housing Insiders. We have a lot of people who are investors, innovators, agents that listen to this podcast and are in the market. What's a conviction or a thesis you think is the most misunderstood still by people in the industry about agents? Do you have something that you think is still widely misunderstood, even by those of us surrounding the housing ecosystem?
The ones surrounding the ecosystem, probably less than the public, right? I teach agents all the time. Like, I think as an expert, and by the way, I think this is generally applicable. I think we all, as practitioners of whatever we do, take for granted what we do. So, for example, when I was an agent and I met with a first-time home buyer, I said, "Hey, I'm going to make you a couple predictions that will come true. The week of closing, you're going to be in a super important meeting, and your lender is going to send you a 911 text, and they're going to ask for something asinine, like a copy of your lease in college that doesn't exist because you were in the dorm room. And if you don't get it to them in the next hour, the underwriter is going to push the deal to next week, and you've already like handed over your apartment, and your wife and kids are going to be homeless. You're going to be super mad. You're going to take a deep breath, and you're going to text me, Leo's a genius, and he predicted this was going to happen, and we're just going to figure it out. Is that fair?" And they laugh, and then it happens, and they're like super mad, but at the same time, they're like, "How did you know?" I'm like, "Because it fucking happens 80% of the time," right? And for the lenders listening, can we not do that?
Yeah.
But
Can we please stop doing that?
like, what's the probability of what I was saying is going to happen? Pretty high, right? Because that
Even
first
still.
time home buyer, that the Everest that you referred to it as, hasn't been solved yet. So like, I think we just, but again, as an agent, I do this every single day of my life, and it's normal. It's like, no, it's normal. No, it's not normal if you don't do this every day. So that's where I think, again, there is a ton of friction in housing, which is why the role still exists. And like the disparateness of where title is held and insurance and loan underwriting and non-QM versus QM and the experience and the negotiation. And then you remember that sellers do this an average of 3 times in their life and buyers do it an average of 3 times in their life. And there's all this like emotional baggage that goes with it. And like, do you have the septic certificate that was not filed 8 years ago? And you need someone who knows where to go specifically in the county to make it happen in 2 hours. Like, I think the thing that all of us in the sector forget is the gargantuan task that it is that is not normal to the average civilian. And I think that gets forgotten all the time, where it's like all of us do these things that are like, oh, yeah, you just call the guy and it's fixed. It's like only us weirdos in our corner of the economy understand the complexity and just forget. And I think that's the part I can't explain to people enough. It's like, yeah, we just kind of glaze over like it's normal. It's not normal.
Yeah, it's thematic in a lot of our conversation. I mean, when we talk on the lending side, the sort of misunderstanding people often have is, I hear this from founders, like I'm going to build a lending process that's going to be all digital. Like, oh God, again, you're like, I can't explain to you like how many people have tried and have failed with this, and like, well, the question I always get was like, why are they failing? And it's you got to tell stories like you just told. It's like,
Well, I saw Mark Cuban quote that like shook me to my core once, where he said, the problem with entrepreneurship, a lot of founders who are not domain experts, not SMEs, will come into a space and see what they consider a blue ocean. And unlike other things in life, there is no actual graveyard with tombstones for us to go, yeah, they tried it and they tried it and they tried. Like they're like, oh, look at this thing that's never been like it's an open space. No, no, that's not an open space. That's a graveyard. There's dead people underneath that empty patch that you are looking at green space. It's really it's very green and it looks like very fertile land because there's a lot of dead cadavers there that's making the grass green, but there are no actual tombstones, right? They're just dead.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that being true, I mean, AI does feel like, the only time that these things really change is if there's a significant change in the environment, so something meaningful that's going to change the likely set of outcomes. And AI does feel like one that is more capable of handling the sort of judgment based, complex, heavy knowledge required types of things. So I do feel some bit of optimism. I don't know that some of the complexity could be handled a little bit better.
100%. So I don't want to sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. The amount of streamlining we've done on our back end that is being done by humans is blowing my mind. Like I'm talking about like 150 transactions goes to like 232 transactions per person per day. Like real meaningful lift, which by the way, for me is not like let's drop that to the bottom line. For me, it's like, how do I then repurpose that human capital to better human experiences? Because a thesis that I personally believe in is over the next 3 to 5, 10 years, the human experience is going to be at a massive premium, right? The more we automate, the more we become like just always being pushed towards a digital version of a human. I think we're going to appreciate real human connection and experiences. They're going to be at a premium. And as a founder, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, I always go back to like, you don't have to be all things to all people, right? Will there be a fully digital AI native brokerage that doesn't have a human interaction? Absolutely. Does that mean I have to build that? No, I do not, right? Just like there's, brand first companies that have no cap and have office space, and I don't know why anyone would be there. We're cloud based with a cap, and there's agents at those brokerages that look at mine and go, I would never be at this virtual thing that I don't get to walk in and talk to someone. Okay. Right. And so it's just kind of finding your space. And I don't know of a single product or service that's winner take all. And so I think you just need to figure out what corner of the economy you want to serve make some money at it, and get to work with people you get along with every day.
Yeah, let me ask a quick follow-up on that. It almost sounds like what you're saying is there's certain things in your role and in your organization that are getting easier. Is there something that's actually getting easier for you at EXP?
I mean, there's just things we can now. Yeah. So, like, building technology has become a completely different conversation. And as someone who's built and scaled tech, like, this is a game changer, right? And where it gets super interesting is the long tail of a development roadmap, right? So, for example, you guys know what a development roadmap looks like. I would take the bottom like 17 things. We both know they're never going to get built, ever. They're just never, ever, ever going to be built because there's always the
They're
priority,
always the bottom. Yeah.
right? But like, I'm now having my frontline teams just build it themselves in Claude Cowork, Lovable, Codex. Pick your poison. And by the way, it's technology that never had a large enough TAM or monetization strategy. Right, like we just built this super cool open house app that the team showed me that the broker ops team built. Not a single engineer was involved, and it was, you can, it's in beta right now, but you can like put in a zip code and it shows you all of our only listings, and it generates, like, you can click a button and it generates the copy for an email from the agent wanting to hold a listing open to the listing agent. And then when they get there, there's a digital checklist of how many directional signs they put out and how many people came through. And then at the end, the agent who held it open can click a button and generates a PDF without their contact information that's generic that they can hand to the listing agent, who then can show the seller the activity that was created over the weekend on their property. Like, no one would ever build that. And like, how would you, like, your CAC would be too expensive to actually monetize it. But like, I have teams that can just build stuff now. And like, we've entered in an era that I'm calling a disposable technology era, where it's a micro app and you can throw it away, right? Like, you can build an app for an event that is super specific to that event. And like, you don't have to build Eventbrite. You're just like, no, it's like the Lawless party on Sunday. Like, John can build that for the Saturday party and throw it away when he's done. And it costs nothing, right? Which is a, like, conceptually, as someone who spent 10 years of my life building technology, it's fascinating to even consider.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I want to, so as we kind of wrap up here,
That's a good app, though. I want to see the Lawless party
Yeah,
app.
let's have a
I was
party,
just
John.
gonna say it's only $1, so it'll be on the App Store tomorrow. So as we kind of wrap up here, just a couple like last questions. Leo, you do a lot of these, and I think the industry often appreciates, or some of the industry doesn't appreciate that you get out and you're so vocal. But I think your transparency and your thoughtfulness around issues that are really affecting the industry has been tremendous. But I just want to give you maybe a chance to write the script a little bit here. Like, is there something that you're not being asked about, or that when you get on these things, like you kind of wish you could talk about that we haven't covered today?
No, I think you hit all the ones that are top of mind and important to me. Like, and I say this often, so I don't know if I'm just repeating things, but I think a lot of times when we get into these like heavy political debates about the industry and theory of what's better, like, at the end of the day, just remember, we're helping families make the most expensive decision of their life. It only happens. They move 6 times: three as a tenant, three as a home buyer. It's terrifying. It's expensive. It's the most emotional thing we ever do. When the three of us buy houses, we turn into an emotional bag of feelings, even though we're in the industry. We all do, every single one. And kind of like all logic is suspended. And if we can remember that, let's just make that process better for the end consumer. And that should put everything into perspective as how we make decisions.
Yeah, that's great. Leo, thank you again for joining us. I like to ask kind of like a hot seat question at the end. You mentioned not having a magic wand. And so I kind of want to ask the question this way. If you were 25 years old today, you're a renter, renting an apartment, no real estate license, you're starting from scratch. Is there a specific strategy that you would follow to build wealth inside or outside of real estate any way you want over the next 10 years? How would you think about that?
Yeah, it's exactly how I did it when I was that age, which was house hack, right? I bought a 4 bedroom when I was 20 years old and rented out 3 rooms to my friends and had them pay my mortgage. And then I was like, oh shit, I should do that a couple more times. If I did it all over again, I would have bought a fourplex. I didn't know Fannie Mae or Freddie FHA allowed me to go up to four, or I would have bought a four. Like, I remember I was like, damn, I wish I would have known that. Like, I bought FHA. It was the greatest tool that was ever available to me. My father was my non-occupant co-borrower. I used my 3% commission as my down payment. Like that's magic. Compare any other country on the planet. You can't do that, right? Like a child bought a house and came out of pocket with $0 and built equity that eventually funded my startups, right? I am the definition of the American dream from what the housing economy creates in every facet, from a practitioner to a founder to scaling stuff. But yeah, if you're 25, understand the power of leverage and the products available to you, and buy as much real estate as possible and try not to sell it, and you'll be all right.
Amazing. All right, Leo, so good to see you. Great conversation as always. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, listeners, I have a request for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please forward it to other people, share it, rate it. We like to do these episodes not because it's self-serving, well, it is a little bit, but we like it because we get to talk to amazing people and bring their voices to you. And for us to keep doing that, we need more people listening. So please, again, like and subscribe to our episode.
And if you have an idea for a guest or you'd like to sponsor, reach out to us, podcast@housinginsiders.com. And thank you, as always, to Keenan Chen for the music.